Hello and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Lines. Today we are rejoined by Sheldon. How you doing, bud?
What's up, dude?
Who you will of course remember from the Inhibitions track talk we did before. So today we will be asking, how did you get into Line Rider?
Well, it was probably late 2007, early 2008. I was just messing around. I found it as a flash game, and I remember pretty clearly. I was just playing around, drawing a little track and letting him crash. And me and my mom thought it was the funniest thing to draw a little track and watch him crash. And I eventually played around with it a little more. I was watching all the YouTube videos. I was watching like Tech Dog and like Manflade, all the all oldies but goodies, all the classic writers. And I was like, man, these people are so good. And I'm like, I want to be that good one day. And I kept working and working. And I eventually made my like some pretty significant tracks. I made this one track called like Blocky, and I saved it as Blocky, and it was in my I played it on linereader.com, so I had like a whole bunch of saves. This one was like 6 minutes long. It was like the second in the Blocky series. So I basically drew like regular lines and made them into platforms, like just two-dimensional platforms, and that's all they were, like blocks or squares, for example. Okay. And I made like a 6-minute track, and then I went to upload it to linewriter.com, which was one of the forums at the time. And I was like, okay, how do I upload a track? So I like went to the upload bar, and it said upload your or post your video here. And I like typed in the name of my track. I typed Blocky 2, and I was like, click, 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 and it wouldn't work. And I'm like, man, because you're supposed to type in the YouTube link. You're supposed to. I didn't even know what recording a track was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it was a while before I got out my first track. So it was like, I think June 2008 when I actually released my first track, and that was sometime after my first actual experience with the game. So I think June 28th is my anniversary. So it's been 10 and a half years, or well, not 10 and a half, but like 10 and a few months basically since I put out my first track. So,
yeah.
And that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Nice. So he said right from the get-go you wanted to like be like those people you admired that inspired you. So you wanted to be like the best, quote unquote.
Yeah. I wanted to be the very best, like no one ever was. You like that one? Okay. Well,
yeah.
Anyways, interesting about my story. I'm pretty infamous. Not a whole lot of people know about it anymore. But I'm sure all the old guys do, of course. But there's like just a handful of us around anymore. But so back in the day, there was an old version. I mean, it was a new version at the time. Unbound had come out, and I was still going under the name of 1001 LOOL. That used to be my old username, and it was pretty terrible because it's just so dumb. But yeah. Anyways. So I was playing Unbound, and I noticed that you could download other user tracks that have been uploaded to the file system. So I noticed that there was a track that was uploaded. I was like, wow, this track is so good. I'm going to record it and post it as my own. And mind you, it was, mind
classic
you, I named it basically, I named it Quirkology Unbound, which was off of Unbound and Quirkology series. But the funny thing about it was actually a track, and I had posted it before he had even posted it. So I posted the track, and then he posted it, and everyone was like, "Dude, you stole this guy's track," and I lost everyone's respect like so hard. Like everyone hated me at that point. Like, and it was a long time after that before I got traction again. I was still bad for a long time after that too, and then there was sort of this time period where people were trying to make really long flings, like the longest fling you could make. And everyone said I was faking my line counts, like I didn't count properly for a time. And I also made this track called like Cave of Redemption. It was like an Unbound track that I made to like try to apologize to the community, just like as like a token. It was kind of stupid, but I mean, like like honestly, people the young track makers nowadays are a whole lot more mature than I was at that time, probably. So I guess it says something. I don't know. Maybe I was just a particularly immature to start out. So
yeah, well, some of us take our time, eh?
So yeah. And then I kept getting better, and then eventually I released a track for the collab contest with DeVray, and that's when I got LCC. LCC was a big thing at the time. I'm sure. I think Rabbit explained to you in your talk with him. The
Yeah,
LCC. Are you familiar with it?
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was a member of the LCC. I participated in a couple of the collabs. It was a pretty big deal to get LCC at the time. Like you're like, oh man, you're LCC, and I lost LCC I think in the move because I wasn't really active, and then I got LCC again. Like I'm one of the few people that got LCC twice because I kind of quit for a while. I came back, um, and then LCC was removed. I made a couple new tracks, like came back into the game, made Retrograde. I mean, I've been back so many times. Retrograde was when I got Line Rider Legend, though, and then of course, I released a few tracks after that. So I was the last Line Rider Legend. I don't think there'll ever be another one because of the inactivity of the forum, but the last of the legends, man.
fair enough. So, what would you say your approach is when you make a track? Like, what's important to you? How do you plan your
Well,
tracks?
it sort of changed over time. Initially, people would choose a theme before they made their tracks. They choose an omni. They choose to do a quirk. They choose to do omni, meaning like multiple styles. They choose to do a quirk. They choose to do XY manuals, alt quirk, and you just make a track. And a lot of time, people didn't even have music planned out before they made it. So they'd make a track, and then they'd search for a song that like fitted with it, and then release it. So usually it was like goal based and like trick based. So you try to make the coolest tricks. Initially, that was my goal. And then later, like with the advent of LRA and whatnot, it was like syncing to a song while still maintaining like the skill, of course. Um, but now my approach is just to have fun because I don't do it to impress anyone anymore. I just participate in the collabs when I feel the desire to, and then there is the occasional project where I'm really pushing it with Inhibition C, Inhibition Z, WTK. That was a couple of years ago. I mean, I don't have any really super serious tracks in the works right now, other than the one. But I'd rather not mention it as in case something someone heard about it. But
Yeah,
there is one project, but you'll see that it's coming up January 2nd. Mark your calendars, boys.
yeah. Good luck. Yeah. So you mentioned syncing. So that's I guess like another newer technique we have today. So what do you feel about syncing in general? Do you see that as just another technique, or what's your opinion on syncing?
Syncing has become incredibly mainstream, and it's basically just become the norm. If you're making a serious track at this point, it's going to be synced, with a very few exceptions. One of them being Formed by Chuggers. It was a track made, or maybe it was Freeform. One of the two tracks was made entirely without a song, which was an interesting choice, just to like show just a track in its raw form for once. It seems like, I mean, to me, I was discussing this with Splash the other day. We were like, oh man, syncing seems to be getting stale because it's done so much. It's like, like everyone makes sync tracks track and you're forced to conform to it. So it sort of like limits you creatively. Like you have to maintain like pattern. If you choose a song, you want to stick to it.
I think yeah, this is something that Rabbit kind of mentioned indirectly the other day in our behind the lines talk that when you get these new styles that emerge, inevitably everyone copies it and it becomes like quite stale after a while. Familiarity. I've said it before. Familiarity breeds contempt. Something that is impressive to you before becomes less impressive the more you see it, and that's just the
Yeah.
nature of the beast in this case. So, how much?
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to say syncing was like really groundbreaking back then. We used 6.7 was very difficult to sync with because it lagged even on the best computers. Like, so even if you wanted to sync and you had perfect timing, you'd have to either record the track or play it back every time and see if it's synced at that exact point, or make out a time map and like loosely sync based on the time map you create.
Yeah.
Like Raphael's first major sync, the first ever major sync track was jammed by Raphael, and it took ages to make it because he had to record every few seconds, or even maybe more than that. And he spent hundreds of hours making that track, but
Yeah,
it just
that's
tells you how things have
it's
changed. So
crazy. Very very work intensive. I mean, personally, I think as with any tool, it's kind of more like how you use it that's gonna like influence how the track is seen and received. But certainly any tool can be overused, and within the wake of tracks like Mountain King, syncing is certainly the new style. So we all have to be careful not to almost. I've said this before, but I think sometimes it's possible to become too reliant on music. So that's something I've been trying to avoid in my more recent tracks. Try and make the style maybe a little bit looser. But yeah.
oh
So
yeah.
the next question I would ask is, I guess you've said your style, quote unquote, is more like trick based or technique based. But would you say there's like an intention behind your tracks or a theme? Like, is there like intentionality, or is it just
Okay, well, there's been some intention. There was a period where I guess I was at my peak, and I would consider that around. So there was the release of Retrograde, okay, followed by the release of Valence, followed by Confine, WTK, all in that little era. And that was when I was like at my creative peak, I'd say, for Line Rider. And I mean, I would just choose a theme and or like a track style and just sort of make it based off of that. And it was very systematic. Everyone's like in the past, people would always say my style is very textbook. So like, meaning you think of the perfect flings, you think of the perfect manuals. Like I would make them. It didn't really have a lot of variation to them, and maybe that is, it's like whatever you'd imagine, like what you'd see and say, like how to make a good line runner track textbook. People would say it was what my stuff was like. So to some people that wasn't very interesting, and to others it was like you can't get much better than the textbook, right? Because
yeah?
like a professional wrote it, but to others it seemed a bit stale and like predictable. So
Okay, yeah. So you said your goal before was to like be the very best, like no one ever was. So now,
as a Pokemon reference,
yeah,
but seriously, at one point I was incredibly competitive, and I wanted to learn like movie of the week awards, like get LCC, like do all that, and just be good at the game, really. And that's how it was. And then I got there, and I was like, okay, this is not so great. I gotta innovate. So I just started making things that no one ever done before. So and then that's how I had my fun. Like I talked with Anton and DAP, and we just like innovated and created, and like WTK and like inhibitions, and we just sort of made new things, and that's what we did for fun. So
yeah. And you say that's kind of reached its zenith now with the Inhibitions series. 'Cause I remember we talked about that. You said you've kind of reached like a new ceiling, so to speak.
yeah, I think the ceiling we've reached a ceiling. Like I think we can't get any better. I think all the techniques that are there, as far as unless they're going to be combination techniques, there's not any new techniques that are going to come out like entirely new. I don't think, at least. They're going to be variation. They're going to be based on other techniques that we currently have. I think the
Yeah,
last technique, the last new technique we will have, would be the 10-point cannon, which I
yeah,
think is the pinnacle of track, because it literally it gets rid of all boundaries. You can't. You can do or you can do a frame, and you can teleport them to any frame and have them be in any position by the end of that frame. So like, there's not much more you can do other than that.
yeah.
And
It's very clean.
and that sort of destroys the whole game mentality. You can't be any. So you're basically just trying to elicit a response at this point. And a lot of the communities actually went to sort of a more general public based approach. They want to make accessible tracks. I mean, I still sort of shy away from that. I don't like to um, they're just not fun for me to make tracks like that, so I usually don't. But I don't know. I don't even know if I could if I tried. Like, it might just be harder to fake it if you're not genuine about it, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
like, oh, and I can make this. I can make this flat sled. You know, maybe it's harder than it looks. I've never tried it before to make like a entertaining like flat sled and like accessible style track. I guess I don't know. They're primarily like flat sled manuals. They're not like complicated tricks.
Okay, so yeah, I mean that kind of covers my next question, which was be why do you make tracks? I mean, do you make them for yourself? I mean, you said you don't make them for other people, but I mean, well, you make them for certain
I make them
people
for the
because you would make
I
you'd
make
have
them
to
for the
say,
line rider
yeah,
community, like the people that still care about the progression of the game. And really, it's not progressing anymore at this point. So it's mostly just for me and my sort of cliques little enjoyment, basically, like Dap, Anton, you at times, you know, just to screw around and I don't know, have a good time. At this point, I just sort of linger around the collab server and participate sporadically, and that's sort of what I do as far as like my involvement in the community nowadays.
yeah, well,
Um,
that's what the game should be about, you know. I mean, if we can call it a game, or if you want to call it a medium, or however you want to describe Line Rider, it's always should be primarily just about enjoying yourself.
oh yeah, and that's the problem. At times I would not enjoy myself, and that's what leaded me to my long times of inactivity where I basically just like quit for really long times. You know, probably like years at a time. I quit, or approximately a year each time. I just quit, and yeah, it was unhealthy how much I played it sometimes. Like it was an addiction really to how
Yep.
much I played Line Rider. And I spent like hundreds of hours on certain tracks just trying to make them perfect. And it was so difficult with beta 2 and 6.7. So it led me to just quit because I was grinding and I wasn't enjoying it. Like I was just trying to produce something just for the reaction. And if that's your motivation, you're going to lose the motivation, you know,
Yep, and I would
because
go ahead.
especially if the community dies because if your idea is to impress and there's no one around to impress, it's just you know you got to find other. That's what. And then I finally started coming back, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it for fun and just see where I can take it. And I still got a decent response, of course, but like it's it's not really about that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this was something we've all thought about at some point. If even if you are just trying to make your tracks just for other people, like if you don't enjoy what you do, you're never going to have any kind of sustainability with it. Like it has.
Yeah, and then it's sort of coming back in another form, like with the advent of people that are making some sort of money off the line rider, and Rabbit is one of those individuals. Doodle Chaos is the other one. I mean, they're not making a whole lot of money. It's I'd imagine Doodle Chaos and Rabbit are at the level of a source of side income as far as like line rider line rider goes. I got Ride Liner on my mind. We had a little conspiracy talk about him earlier, but yeah, yeah. So I thought about it myself at times. I was like, oh, it's cool to be a professional line rider player, but like at some point you'd be a slave to the audience and you wouldn't be enjoying it anymore. So like I think hobbies should be just that, hobbies. You know, you're gonna if you're gonna do it entirely just for money and you're like doing solely commissions. You're gonna start hating it, and you're gonna start thinking it's like such a grind because you're not expressing yourself the way you'd like to. You know, you're doing
Yeah,
what other people would like you to do.
yeah. I think that's something we got into with Rabbit, who actually does accept commissions, and he says like he doesn't accept them all, and which I think that's probably like a good way to go. Like just take the ones that you like, so you still have that freedom. Like let's
Oh
say,
yeah, and certainly
yeah,
if I ever got a commission, I wouldn't take it if it was something I don't think I would do a good job at, or if I wouldn't enjoy. You know,
yeah.
um,
So moving on from that question, how do you feel about the state of track making generally? I mean, we've kind of got into this, but like if you were to go into more depth, like how do you feel about the kind of track sheet we see today?
well, I think that the new tracks that we're having are really fun. And it's sort of like a new era of track making where anyone can do these new techniques because it doesn't take so much grind. Like and the resources are out there to help you learn how to do these techniques, and people that haven't been playing for more than like just a few months can do most of the advanced techniques pretty early on. So it's really just a matter of what's your imagination and your time. Obviously it takes time to make really elaborate, animations and techniques if you're doing technique heavy tracks, but really your imagination and your the amount of free time you have is really the only limits to what you could make. Creativity. But it's definitely seemed like a new wave of activity. Like these new riders are really promising, and they really it's just crazy seeing the community like active again. But it's like a different kind of community. It's a lot less toxic, I'd say. It's a lot more like wholesome. People are like encouraging. No one's really being terribly competitive. Like there are contests and everything, but they're like, I mean, they're fun. It's not like you're like, oh damn, I beat you, dude. Like
Yeah,
screw
exactly.
you, But
It's like people
it's
care.
like, oh wow, that was a cool entry,
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
some people like, oh, that was a dumb entry, but it's clear that you weren't really trying.
Yeah, it's
Like
like
it was funny, I guess.
people are more happy just to see what's produced. Like no one really cares that much about who actually wins, which is kind of nice, I guess. Like it's just more about. I mean, sure, like everyone's trying to like if they are trying, then they're trying to make a great track. But what I enjoy those competitions more is the kind of stuff we get out of them. Like we had the minimalist competition where we got Olsen from Fozon, which was a really interesting track. And then
Yeah,
in the
and you're working with you apply new constraints to the game that like stimulate creativity, and I think that's what we're trying to do with the contest and the collabs too, where we do like we have the Beehive collab, which is basically like constrained contest, but like in a collaboration form. You can only build within your hexagon. So
yeah, yeah, and then we had the recent well, like this kind of a version of Secret Santa, but with songs, the Secret Songster contest, and that produced a lot of actually really good, interesting tracks. We got a Terraria from Toivo, which was a very
oh,
interesting
that was
track.
a really good track.
Yeah, like whether you just like syncing or you like technique or whatever you like it's he hits every nail on the head. It's really quite something. So
Uh, yeah, it's good. It's good.
yeah, I guess we've kind of covered some of these. Um, how much would you say like you put into a track? Like we've kind of covered this a bit. Like again, like we kind of generally cover a lot, like on a surface level. But how much would you say like some of the more like complicated tracks you make? Like how much time and how much like effort does that take out of you? Like you mentioned.
Oh yeah, I mean, for example, Valence 3, I built that over the course of 2 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks, probably closer to 2 weeks. And I spent like 5-6 hours a day working on that, sometimes more. Um, but other tracks like 20 minutes. I mean, probably the most I ever worked on a track was for CF2, and I probably spent 500 hours on 50 seconds of track.
Jeez.
So
Yeah, put that
yeah,
into perspective.
yep,
That's a long time.
don't do that. Don't do that. It was a horrible waste of time.
500
This
hours.
is
That's what like 5 weeks of continuous effort almost.
yeah, yeah. It was bad, but it was over the course of a year or two. It wasn't all at once, of course. So
Yeah. So where do you see Line Rider going in the future?
I mean, I think it's going to a very positive place. I think it could potentially eventually get stale again because we like exhaust all the contest ideas and all that, and people just aren't they lose their creativity and all that. But I mean, I can see it. I can see it at least making it for the next few years on the current basis that it has. Um, there are certain games that just stick around forever. They're like classic. Like Minecraft. Um, Smash Bros. And they haven't evolved in any way really. They're just people just still love playing them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like sandbox games, I guess even Minecraft is evolving to some extent. They're adding new features. Like Line Runner really isn't. And I've tried that a little bit, like adding the Spider Bosch trying to get contact point editing so you can explore these new things. And
Yeah.
I've even wanted half size gravity wells so you could do like hangs and stuff. Like, so
Oh,
it
we
seems,
have that already. Yeah.
we do. Well, I've
Yeah.
never had access to a version with it.
Yeah. Ollie made a version like that, I think, and he used it to
I
make.
saw it.
Yeah.
It's not Mac compatible as far as I know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
so I would maybe mess around with that. Spider Bosch is definitely fun.
Yeah, that is an interesting one.
There's a whole number of things you can do with contact point editing, but taking the game and sort of changing it in a less vanilla way. Obviously, Line Rider Advanced is stayed fairly true to its roots, but there are some things that aren't what they used to be. Like, you have 3x lines that are not backward compatible, but I don't think they changed the game in a significant way that it feels like what it shouldn't be,
Yeah, I mean, I think the acceleration lines, I mean, AFA actually took that to the extreme where you can now get times 255 lines, but like it's actually a huge compliment to a lot of people in the lag department, because if you don't happen to run like a like gaming level PC, then these 255 lines reduce lag a whole lot because there's only one object on the screen instead of 250. So if you have so instead of like if you're making a 10-point cannon and you've got 250 lines times 10 or however many you have there, like you can really significantly as you can see here, if you run something made out of wood like Sheldon does, that was built in the 19 I don't even know when was this apparatus made.
It was a while ago.
Something that
starts. It was a while ago, but you can see not everyone's vulnerable to this, because this is what happens when Rhineliner made Ham 2. Yeah, this is the Hadron Collider. But anyway.
Yep, that's how it was made. That's the power it took to make that track. But yeah. So where would you hope to see Line Rider go? You personally?
You mean it just my life or just the community? What do you mean?
Well, what would you like to see from Line Rider? I mean, you said like it looks like it's going in a good place at the moment. Is there anything else you would add to that? Like, is there anything specific you'd like to see more of in Line Rider?
I'd like to see more people, because I think it's a medium that more people could explore, and it's just it doesn't have very much exposure. I mean, you've seen when one track goes viral, what it can do. Like, there was a huge surge of activity because of what Mountain King did, but like, and it also was a bit upsetting to see the response to Mountain King and to have done similar things yourself and very many other people. Like, when the lay people saw Mountain King and they saw music syncing in Line Rider, they were like, "Wow, this is so amazing, so original." But we have been doing that for years. This is nothing new.
Yeah,
it's just the first one that everyone had seen.
Yeah, this is something that, like, actually, we discussed this in the Rabbit Behind the Lines. Like, sometimes tracks that you haven't even put effort into just blow up. Like, in my case, it's like the Turkish March that I made in, like, I don't know, like I just half-assed track, and for whatever reason, it has like 200,000 views.
Oh, there's
like
a very good reason why it has a lot of views, but
yeah, it's just because it's recommended right after Mountain King, which like I'm grateful for the views, but it's like you want the stuff that you put the effort into to get noticed. But like the thing is also, these people that make these comments, is like, it's not their fault, like that they haven't like seen all these other tracks. It's just
it's not.
It's just the YouTube algorithms.
I find it a strange motivation to try to make tracks for these people, because I don't know, but I feel like making tracks for people like that, you're dumbing down the potential. There's so much more you can do with Line Rider beyond just flat sled. But if you do anything else a lot of the time, it can be the message can be lost, and you show it to your friend and they're like, okay, what? I don't get it, or
I
you show
think,
it to anyone
yeah,
and they're
I
like,
think it
whatever.
depends. It depends how you do it, because I mean, if you have take the example of Conundrum's track from this year, okay, like I think that really showcases 10-point cannons
But
in a
if you
way.
notice, that didn't even go viral though.
Well, it
That might
hasn't
even
gone
be too
viral,
complicated.
but I don't know, that there's more than like one explanation for
I
that.
think
Like not everything goes
I
viral, but
think it
for a Line Rider
goes to
track, it
show
still has a lot
you
of views.
you got to have the luck. You got to have some of the luck, and I think you got to have the hot timing. Sometimes things don't go viral, even videos that
Yeah.
really should. But
Yeah, I think also like I think YouTube and Line Red at the moment are kind of geared towards classical music. Again, like like with my track that went, I don't know, can you is it 200,000 views semi viral? I don't even know. It's just like almost normal, I
for
guess,
line
for
runner check, oh yeah, that's basically viral for line runner.
but the reason it got that many views is because it's like in the recommended, like right underneath Mountain King, because it's like a classical track. So it might be that until someone breaks that mold. I mean, I guess we have This Will Destroy You, but then that was the predecessor to all of those. That wasn't made to a classical track necessarily, and obviously it got nearly 2 million views now. So it can
Yeah,
happen, but I guess at the moment the algorithm is kind of gamed towards classical tracks. But like someone will probably break that mold, and but then even with that, like you might still have the same issue. Like you might still have you're always going to have people that you might kind of feel like, oh well, I'm not necessarily making this for you, but that's okay. Like I don't personally make my tracks. I mean, I like that they entertain people, but I don't set out with the goal of that necessarily. Like I just be like, oh, like I want to make this, and if it gets some views, that's awesome. And I'd like them to get views, but it's not like my main goal, if that makes sense.
right.
So yeah, I guess I have one last question. Well, it doesn't have to be the last question, but this is the last question that I normally would standardly ask. So, if you had a message for a new person who, as we discussed, there's lots of new people joining at the moment. If you had one thing that you would say to a new person that's just getting into Line Rider, what would you tell them? What would be your advice?
Don't take it too seriously. Um, it is what you make it. So, like, if you want to make it this profound art medium, you can do that. But if you just want to screw around, you can also do that. Usually people quitting is a result of them taking it way too seriously and just getting bored of it. But if you're just in it to have some fun, if you're not having fun, feel free to quit. Like that a lot of people just stick around trying to continue to make tracks, and it's just like if you're not enjoying it, line writer for almost everyone is just a hobby. Like there are two people who make any resemblance of money off of it. So if you're not enjoying it, just you know move on with your life. Really,
Yeah, I mean,
you have no there. I'd say the same thing about anything in your move on. And of course, I don't want you to. I'm not telling people like, oh, you shouldn't try it at all. But like, if you're not enjoying it, there's no reason to waste your time with something you don't enjoy. And that's something. It's not really an issue nowadays because most people are really enjoying themselves. But just do what you like. I think what I really want to say is like, don't make a track you don't like, you don't enjoy making. So if you're not enjoying making it, you're not doing the goal. The goal is to have fun, really. So if you're just trying to make something really special, and you're not enjoying yourself, you might want to reconsider your motives. Because it can be difficult. If you're just looking to get approval out of something, you might be wasting your time. I don't know. I have a hard time trying to, I guess, say what I'm trying to
yeah,
say, but
I think it's getting across that. I mean, seeking validation for tracks is a trap that a lot of new people and even sometimes the older guys could fall into. I mean, I'm sure when I first joined, my goal was, oh yeah, like I want to make these tracks. I want to like draw attention to myself and all this. But like very quickly, like you learn like it's not really about that. Like just enjoy yourself, make what you want to make, push yourself as hard as you feel comfortable doing, if that's what you want to do, in whatever way you would like to do that. But just don't let line rider become a job to you instead of a hobby. And when I say
Yeah,
job, I don't mean that you can't make it a job and enjoy it. What I mean is don't let it become a chore. Is perhaps a better phrasing of that.
yeah, and sure, just enjoy yourself. Like, and if you're not, there's no sense in doing it, really. You know.
Yeah.
And if you do get to the point where it's your career, I mean, like you sort of managed to do that. So I mean, it's there are worse jobs. So
Yeah. So unless do you have anything else you'd like to say? I mean, I've reached the extent of my questions at this point.
I I have a 10-minute track in the works right here, boys. This is this is the evolution of Line Rider 2, Electric Boogaloo. Oh man,
Wow, that's
look at this
actually
bad
pretty
boy.
long. Yeah. That's
Over
something.
9,000 lines.
Over 9,000.
But it's mostly just like little curve. It's so left and right based. Let's take a quick gander at it. Just remove this flag. Well, how do you remove a flag? Oh, there we go.
I don't know analogy.
Yeah, look at.
Yeah. Hey. There you go. That's the line rider track in its purest and most time-honored form. You got some flat sled and a couple of manual tricks thrown in for fun.
This is definitely one of the fastest ways to make a track. It's not good by any means, but it's a thing, and it just keeps. This thing is so long. Look at this.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I hope if you tuned into this that you enjoyed it and maybe learned something. And if you didn't, you're probably an old player, so I don't know why you would even bother to watch this.
Okay, and with that last interesting statement, we are signing off here. Thanks for watching. If you liked or enjoyed this in any way, leave a comment or a like down below. If you hated it, leave some hate down below. And
yeah, one more thing. Comment if you believe Rideliner is Conundrumer.
You heard it here first.
Comment of the day.
The new conspiracy theory has begun. Conundrum. We're gonna dig into this now with you. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's the end of the video. Is Conundrum a Rideliner? Well, you will wait and find out. Yeah, tune in next time when, at some point, hopefully, I will be interviewing Conundrum, and we shall discover that for ourselves. Okay. See ya.